thrown out at 17 with nothing but $12 and a garbage bag. Now the same family that vanished for years is knocking on the door of my $750,000 house. I was still a teenager when my father looked me dead in the eye and told me I wasn't cut out for anything. Not in a rage, not in a moment of frustration. He said it quietly, almost gently, the way someone delivers news they think you need to hear. He believed he was sparing me from false hope. Figure out where you actually stand, his tone seemed to say, and life gets easier for everyone. He called me the spare, said it without even glancing up from his newspaper. My brother was the heir. I was just the leftover. That sentence lodged itself somewhere deep inside me and never fully left. For as long as I could remember, I existed in the margins of our family's story. Never the main character, always somewhere off to the side. Nathan was everything they celebrated. Star athlete, honor roll. The son our father called champ, even after fumbling. He had the bedroom with the lake view, a fresh car waiting on his 16th birthday, and parents who lit up whenever he walked into a room. I got worn-out hand-me-downs, sideways looks, and criticism for simply taking up space. For a long time, I convinced myself the fault was mine, so I pushed harder. Picked up a job at 15, kept my grades from slipping. Even sat down with Nathan and tutored him through math when his grades started falling apart. None of it moved the needle. My mother labeled me lazy for sleeping in on Sunday mornings, conveniently ignoring that I'd been on my feet until midnight at the diner. My father called me directionless when culinary school came up instead of a 4-year degree. And Nathan just watched with that quiet smirk every time they laid into me, soaking in every word like it was entertainment. The summer before senior year is when everything cracked open. Nathan totaled his car coming home from a party, drunk, bleeding, completely unraveling when I found him hunched in the garage. He grabbed my arm and begged me to keep it quiet, so I did. I walked into that house and told my parents I had taken the car without permission, panicked and disappeared. I thought falling on that sword might finally prove something, that I was loyal, that I would protect this family no matter the cost. That maybe they'd finally see me differently. They showed me the door instead. No shouting, no drawn-out argument. My father simply pointed toward the exit and said I had embarrassed the family long enough. That night I curled up inside a bus shelter 2 blocks away. The following morning I returned with my school backpack, and what I found on the porch was a garbage bag stuffed with clothes and a handwritten note telling me I was on my own and to learn something from it. Nobody reached out. Not a single call, not one message. My mother stood up in church and told people I had chosen the streets because I was too rebellious to be helped. 2 weeks after throwing me out, Nathan was in Florida posting beach selfies like the world was perfectly fine. I kept myself breathing, pulling double shifts at a convenience store, sleeping on flattened cardboard in the stockroom whenever the manager wasn't around to notice. But the sharpest pain wasn't the exhaustion or the hunger, it was the silence. No birthday message, no Christmas card, not even a casual "how are you" drifting my way. 3 full years passed as though I had simply never existed. It wasn't until I earned my associate degree through community college, relocated 3 towns over, and quietly built a freelance marketing business off library Wi-Fi that I finally exhaled. For the first time, something close to freedom settled over me, until last month shattered that peace with a single text from my mother. One line. Nothing more. Is that your face on the billboard off Route 9? It was. The local Chamber of Commerce had featured me as a young entrepreneur spotlight after my work helped several small businesses triple their online presence. In the grand scheme of things, maybe it wasn't monumental, but for me, it was everything. Concrete proof that I was never the spare, that I had never been just a shadow. Within 2 hours, my father was calling. I let it ring. Then the voicemails started stacking up. Nathan, distant relatives, people whose numbers I barely recognized anymore. All of them were suddenly warm, suddenly interested, suddenly eager to know how life was treating me. I didn't respond. Not immediately, because something in my gut already knew the answer. They hadn't done the work of changing. They had simply spotted something from a distance and moved toward it. And right on cue, my mother called again the following day. Her voicemail was casual, almost breezy. She mentioned a rough patch, mentioned that Nathan and his wife were close to losing their place. Then came the ask. Did I still have that spare room I used to bring up? I actually laughed out loud. Because that spare room was part of a house I owned outright. Every square foot of it was paid for in cash. I left her message unanswered. That day and the next. Then my Aunt Janice slid into my Facebook inbox with her own angle, suggesting it would mean a great deal to the family if I chose to step up right now. Step up. I nearly inhaled my coffee. I wanted to ask her exactly where that energy was hiding when I was a teenager folded into a bus shelter with nowhere to go. It is almost poetic, the way some people wield the word family, like it is a universal pass, like shared blood quietly cancels out every act of cruelty, every year of cold silence, every door slammed shut. 2 weeks after throwing me out, Nathan was in Florida posting beach selfies like the world was perfectly fine. I kept myself breathing, pulling double shifts at a convenience store, sleeping on flattened cardboard in the stockroom whenever the manager wasn't around to notice. But the sharpest pain wasn't the exhaustion or the hunger, it was the silence. No birthday message, no Christmas card, not even a casual "how are you" drifting my way. 3 full years passed as though I had simply never existed. It wasn't until I earned my associate degree through community college, relocated 3 towns over, and quietly built a freelance marketing business off library Wi-Fi that I finally exhaled. For the first time, something close to freedom settled over me. Until last month shattered that peace with a single text from my mother. 1 line. Nothing more. "Is that your face on the billboard off Route 9? It was. The local Chamber of Commerce had featured me as a young entrepreneur spotlight after my work helped several small businesses triple their online presence. In the grand scheme of things, maybe it wasn't monumental. But for me, it was everything. Concrete proof that I was never the spare, that I had never been just a shadow. Within 2 hours, my father was calling. I let it ring. Then the voicemails started stacking up. Nathan, distant relatives, people whose numbers I barely recognized anymore. All of them were suddenly warm, suddenly interested, suddenly eager to know how life was treating me. I didn't respond. Not immediately, because something in my gut already knew the answer. They hadn't done the work of changing. They had simply spotted something from a distance and moved toward it. And right on cue, my mother called again the following day. Her voicemail was casual, almost breezy. She mentioned a rough patch, mentioned that Nathan and his wife were close to losing their place. Then came the ask, did I still have that spare room I used to bring up? I actually laughed out loud, because that spare room was part of a house I owned outright. Every square foot of it was paid for in cash. I left her message unanswered, that day and the next. Then my Aunt Janice slid into my Facebook inbox with her own angle, suggesting it would mean a great deal to the family if I chose to step up right now. Step up. I nearly inhaled my coffee. I wanted to ask her exactly where that energy was hiding when I was a teenager folded into a bus shelter with nowhere to go. It is almost poetic, the way some people wield the word family, like it is a universal pass, like shared blood quietly cancels out every act of cruelty. Every year of cold silence, every door slammed shut. I even included a screenshot, a text Nathan had sent me years earlier, the one where he casually bragged about how effortless it had been to get rid of me. I pressed send and felt something I hadn't expected. Not fear, no regret, just stillness. It took roughly an hour for the message to move through the family. I had muted the group chat years ago, but my phone lit up anyway and didn't stop. Aunt Marie asked if any of it was real, saying she had never known. Uncle Leo admitting he had been told I ran away, that I was on drugs. Cousin Denise said she always wondered where I went and that she was sorry. Message after message surfacing, shock, guilt, sympathy, and a few of the clumsy, half-formed apologies that say more about the sender's discomfort than anyone else's pain. I didn't hold that against them. I hadn't written the message looking for pity. I had written it because the truth deserved to exist somewhere beyond my own memory. Then a name appeared in my inbox that I never anticipated. Alyssa, Nathan's wife. She said she was sorry, that she hadn't known any of it, that Nathan had told her I was unstable and violent, that my grandmother had taken me in after I attacked my mother. Reading that, she wrote, made her feel physically ill. Before I could fully process that, a second message arrived. She had left him the night before. I had to read it twice. Apparently she had read my message aloud to Nathan. He laughed at first, then went rigid, then erupted. He grabbed her phone and tried to delete everything, shouting at her for being naive enough to believe it. Alyssa, 7 months pregnant, looked at the man in front of her and finally recognized the pattern she had been living inside. She packed a bag and went to her sister's. She told me my message had cracked something open in her, that she could see clearly now, and that her child deserved better than what she had been excusing. I didn't celebrate. I just told her she had done the right thing. That should have been the end of it. But Nathan never handled exposure gracefully. 3 days later, I was walking out of my favorite coffee shop, keys in hand, when I heard my name. I turned and there he was. He looked hollowed out, unshaven, eyes heavy, still wearing that varsity jacket from high school, like he was holding on to the last moment anyone had treated him like he mattered. "You think you're better than me now?" The sneer was there, but the confidence behind it had curdled. I said nothing. He closed the distance between us. "Too close," said I had always played the victim. Said no one actually cared about my sob story. I could smell the stale beer underneath his words. "You lied," I said, quietly. "No performance in it." "Yeah." He let out a short, hollow laugh. "So what? You survived, didn't you? You've got the house and the billboard, so stop crying about it." There was so much living inside me at that moment. Every night I had fallen asleep, questioning my own worth. Every birthday that passed without a single message. Every crack he and my parents had carved into me over the years. I wanted to pour all of it out right there in that parking lot. But he wanted a scene, so I stepped around him, opened my car door, and left him with just one thing. "You lied. I thrived. And now you have to live with that." I drove away, and didn't look back. That evening I had dinner with my grandmother, the one person in my life who never required evidence before she believed in me. I walked her through everything. The email, the responses, Nathan in the parking lot. She sat with her hands folded and listened without interrupting, nodding slowly as I spoke. When I finished, she reached across the table and covered my hand with hers. "You did good," she said. That was all I needed to hear. 1 week later, a certified letter arrived from my parents' attorney. They were exploring defamation proceedings over the email I had sent to the family. I laughed, out loud, without restraint. My lawyer, yes, I had finally hired one for myself, told me to take a breath. The claims were hollow, nothing built to last. The evidence alone, particularly Nathan's own written words confirming what he had done, would dismantle anything they tried to file. I never received a follow-up from their attorney. The silence returned, same as always. I suppose when you stop being something they can use, you stop existing to them entirely. That's when I did something I hadn't allowed myself to do in years. I framed the note, the one left on that trash bag on the porch the night they pushed me out. "You're on your own now. Learn something from this." It hangs in my office today, right beside my Chamber of Commerce award. Most people frame their degrees. I framed a dismissal and turned it into a declaration. Spare, that's the word he used for me. Just the spare. A ghost hovering at the edge of the family portrait. A chair left empty at the dinner table. A name nobody said unless it came attached to the question, "What is wrong with her?" But here is the cruelest thing about being labeled the spare parts don't get discarded forever. Eventually someone decides they're useful again. Eventually, they come back to recycle you. And that's exactly what they attempted. It started with a knock. Not a voicemail this time. Not a text or a car idling across the street. An actual knock on my door. Just after the sun had gone down. I almost let it go unanswered. Something stopped me. When I pulled the door open, I didn't see my father. I saw a man who had collapsed somewhere inside himself. The commanding voice was gone. The posture that once filled every room had folded inward. He stood on my porch in a worn, threadbare sweater, holding not a single envelope but a thick stack of papers. "I'm signing the house over to you," he said, still not quite meeting my eyes. "Your grandmother said you'd earned it more than any of us ever did." My grandmother. The moment her name left his mouth, something shifted in the air between us. I felt it before he said another word. "She's sick," he added, finally looking at me. No build-up, no careful framing. No attempt to soften it, just the fact, dropped plainly between us. "Cancer. Stage 4. We sat together on my porch without speaking. The same porch where my mother had stood with her Tupperware container and her carefully rehearsed task. "She didn't want to tell you," he muttered eventually. "Said it would pull you away from your work. Said she was proud of you." Proud. That single word landed heavier than anything else he could have chosen. I turned my eyes toward the garden she and I had built together last spring. Lavender, rosemary, marigolds. She had called it her living prayer. I could still see her faded gardening gloves draped over the fence post where she had forgotten them just the week before. I swallowed everything rising inside me, because this moment no longer belonged to old wounds. It belonged to her. She passed 3 weeks later, at my home, the one they had once decided I had no right to own. I held her hand as her breathing grew thin and far apart. She wasn't frightened. She just said, "Promise me you'll plant something new every spring. That's how you start over." And then she was gone, but not before leaving me one final gift, a truth I never saw coming. I found it in a small wooden box tucked beneath her bed, sealed shut with a letter on top. Her handwriting, slanted and neat and completely unmistakable, to the granddaughter they never saw. Inside was a collection of journal entries on yellowing paper, dated across years I had spent most of my life trying to forget. She had been writing since I was 9, 11, 14. Every birthday that passed without acknowledgement. The bruises, the lies. The way Nathan engineered each accusation against me with quiet precision. In the afternoon, my mother, believing no one could hear her, called me a mistake. My grandmother had recorded all of it with careful, deliberate handwriting, not as gossip but as testimony. At the bottom of the box sat a deed transfer, already notarized, already signed. She had made me her sole heir. I didn't cry, not because I wasn't shattered, but because her final act wasn't born from grief. It was something closer to justice. She had reached across time and rewritten what our family story would leave behind. The funeral was small and I kept it that way intentionally. No open invitation, no sprawling guest list, no room for people who would spend the service quietly rearranging the narrative to suit themselves. I chose names, only the ones I trusted to sit inside silence without flinching or rewriting history the moment it grew uncomfortable. But of course, they came anyway. Nathan showed up, my mother too, dressed in black as though the color alone could conceal everything underneath it. They lingered at the edges of the gathering, waiting for an opening to insert themselves into a grief they had never earned the right to share. After the final prayer, my mother made her approach. No tears. She simply surveyed the garden, the house, the circle of friends and colleagues who had gathered around me, people who had chosen to be there, people who had chosen me. Then she asked the only thing she had actually come to ask. "Is it true? Did she leave it all to you?" I looked her directly in the eye and gave her the one thing she had spent my entire childhood withholding from me. Yes. That night, a letter appeared on my doorstep, typed, formal, stripped of any warmth, a request for temporary accommodation during a period of healing and transition. They wanted to live in her house, the same house they had turned their backs on when she opened it to me. I sat with it for a long time. Then I wrote back, "Dear Mr. and Mrs. Turner, thank you for your interest in staying at the residence located at 49 Maplewood Lane. At this time, all rooms are currently occupied by peace, silence, dignity, and the long overdue scent of lavender. As such, we are unable to accommodate guests who abandoned these values long ago. May you find shelter in the structures built by your own choices. Kindly despair no more." I posted it, along with everything else. No edits, no softening, no performance, just the unfiltered account of what had happened and what it had cost me. It spread further than I ever anticipated. People shared it, stitched it, sent me messages not seeking drama, but exhaling something they had been holding for years. Because I was not the only one. There are so many of us, so many people handed the label of spare who turned out to be the entire engine all along. This morning I walked through my grandmother's garden and kept the promise I made at her bedside. I planted a single white rose bush and named it Rebirth, just as she asked, just as she knew I would. And this time, the story doesn't close with exile or bitterness. It closes with roots, because I was never the spare. I was the seed that survived. If this story moved something in you, you're not alone, and you were never meant to be. New stories go up every week on A Father's Wrath, so if you haven't already, Hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. Every share brings another spare into the light. See you in the next one.